presentation to give you tips for distance performances in 2021. This is for Component 2, Text in Performance, or 9DRO02 as it's also known. My name is Sally Bruton and I am the Principal Examiner for Component 2. This support session was recorded on the 19th of October 2020. The information outlines the confirmed changes from the Department of Education and Ofqual to the requirements of the specification. Additionally, you can find information on the Pearson Edexcel website in the top right-hand corner labelled COVID-19 Update. Information is also shared through email updates on our communities page and on the subject page for drama and performing arts. There's a link there for all of the changes and further information to support centres, and this link is located in the A-Level Drama and Theatre website page in the top right-hand corner. The purpose of this session is not to offer training, but to share ideas and guidance that we all, as drama teachers, can choose to use when approaching the new challenges of preparing a performance from text, working in groups, alone or in a duologue, performing for a live or remote audience, all whilst maintaining the social distancing, hygiene guidance and rules as set out by the Public Health England, Department of Education, adhering to localised restrictions and those of your individual schools. So in this session, we will recap the demands of Component 2, focusing on the changes to delivery, assessment and requirements for 2021. We will look at practical ideas for rehearsal and ultimately the performance of text for A-Level 9DRO02 in light of social distancing requirements, including approaches to the design roles. As we didn't have an exam series in 2020, we will take some time to address common issues and cover frequently asked questions. We'll look at best practice in administration, and finally we will cover where you can access further support. So just to give you that overview, it is an externally assessed component worth 20% of the overall qualification. It will still be worth 60 marks in total, and it will still be externally assessed. So looking now at the impact of COVID and changes to 2021. Due to COVID-19, there was no assessment series in 2020, as you know. After each series, we would usually produce a principal examiner report, but after A-levels were cancelled, we did not have one for summer 2020. And as the autumn 2020 series excluded the NEA components, we will also have no new report to share from this. Therefore, we would really recommend you review the 2019 principal examiner report for Component 2. So, quickly overview of the changes for 2021. Performance and design realisation will be completed for one key extract only, rather than two. The component will be marked out of either 24 marks for a monologue or duologue performance or design realisation, or 36 marks for a group performance or design realisation. To help facilitate this, there will be two entry codes for Component 2 to allow for the differing marks. 9DRO02A will be for the monologue and duologue option, and 9DRO02B will be for the group option. Marks for 9DRO02A and O2B will be scaled up to ensure this component mark remains out of 60. There are new regulatory minimum timings in place for all performance routes. Therefore, the time penalty tables have been changed to reflect these new minimum timings. An audience can still be small, live or a virtual one, but must include the teacher. There's also a new process for designers who are not able to realise their designs in performance. And this component will be assessed by an examiner via recorded evidence rather than by a visiting examiner. So we're going to look now at AO2 recording and administration. To reduce the potential risk for candidates, staff, audiences and examiners, a suspension of marking by a visiting examiner will be employed for 2021. All centres are required to provide audio-visual recordings for all examined candidates of Component 2 on one key extract for external examination. All examiners will be trained to mark on the recording, and the application of the AO2 criteria will be applied as normal. So, tips for reducing your recording. Please also refer to Appendix 4, which is on page 77 in the specification, for guidance on best practice when recording a performance. But in brief, all recordings must be complete and unedited for each performance. Please don't send two recordings from different angles. Please, as the teacher expert in the room, decide which one is the best for your centre. The camera should be positioned to ensure the best possible view, and then an unobstructed recording is made of the performance as it would be seen by the examiner. Panning and zooming should not be used excessively, but you are trying to keep your candidates in shot so they are identifiable to someone who does not know them. Each candidate should introduce themselves at the start of the recording. They should provide the following information: name and candidate number, details of the performance role, the design role, including the group number. It's really helpful to the assessment process for centres to make identification as clear as possible. Therefore, please consider using any or indeed all of the following. Candidates holding up A4 sheets to the camera in their introduction that state candidate name and number in a large font. Providing full-length group photographs or static shots of candidates in costume, and labelled screenshots of candidates in performance. If the students are working remotely, they are required to perform the work live to the audience on a platform such as Zoom, Teams or Meet. Remote performances must be recorded live with the teacher present. The final performance can now take place in front of a small live audience or to a remote one or to the teacher. So if a candidate is isolating, they can perform via a remote platform and the teacher will watch it live and then they will record it as well. Another 2021 change, so it's a monologue or a duologue or a group performance. Performers and designers now have the option to complete this component through a monologue or a duologue or as part of a group. It is not possible for candidates to appear in both a group performance and a duologue or monologue, such as a non-assessed individual in one performance and then be assessed in the other. Although the assessment criteria is awarded differently, marks will be scaled regardless of the route taken to be out of 60 marks. Candidates should appear in one performance only, and there is no need at all to use non-assessed individuals in this component this year. 2021 changings to timings. There are revised regulatory minimum timings in place for 2021 for the duologues and monologue options. These are minimum 1.5 minutes for a monologue and 3 minutes for a duologue. There are also revised regulatory minimum timings in place for groups. These are 3 minutes. We've amended the time penalty conversion tables in line with the revised regulatory minimum timings. Please see Appendix 3 for that update. Here's an overview of the timings. We've included the recommended minimum performance times to provide some consistency with the previous assessment series, but we want to reiterate that these are recommendations only. If students cannot perform longer group pieces due to the disruption caused by COVID-19, this is perfectly acceptable. Please be aware examiners will be required to stop marking after the maximum performance time has passed, whether or not all candidates have appeared or not. Please be aware. We understand the challenges faced by centres when preparing to perform from text whilst maintaining social distancing. Therefore, the recommended minimum times are more flexible in 2021. Centres should try to perform work that meets these minimum performance times. However, if the work is under these timings, please remember they are recommendations. It is important to note the regulatory requirement that groups and duologues must complete a minimum performance time of 3 minutes and monologues 1.5 minutes for this component. Performances under that regulatory minimum timing will result in a proportional time penalty, as in the previous series. Uploading your recordings. The file types for uploading should be in MP4 format. It is of vital importance that the recording information sheet is completed accurately. All performances must be completed with the following naming convention for performance. For monologues, please label centre number, mono, candidate number. For duologues, please label centre number, duo, candidate numbers. For groups, please label centre number, group, group number. You will need to complete the mark sheets for each candidate as usual. The details how to upload the work will be provided towards the end of the assessment window in 2021. As the assessment will be carried out by recordings and centres will provide these electronically, the Component 2 mark sheets will be simplified for 2021. Please ensure that you check the website for the new 2021 administrative forms when preparing your materials for scanning. Please include an accurate detail of the student's appearance in the performance on the recording information sheet. Photographs are also really helpful. Script extracts and statements of intention must be collated and scanned together in sequential order for each group performance and saved as separately labelled files in this group order. All supporting documentation must have student name and candidate number on. The extract provided for monologues, duologues and small groups need only be for the actual extract to be performed rather than the entire 10-minute extract studied. However, this should be a photocopy from a script, not a typed extract. The focus of performance for candidates. For Component 2, the requirement to perform in front of a live audience has been amended to allow for both a live and virtual audience. This means that students can now perform live or virtually in front of a small audience, to include their teacher, or just to their teacher. The teacher must be present to authenticate the work of the students. There is no requirement for final performances to be done with fully designed set, lighting, costumes if performance students are not working with designers. Students must not perform to the camera. Centres are reminded that the performance focus should be theatrical and not for the screen. Furthermore, candidates should perform within the style of the selected text. As in previous series, work demonstrating inappropriate direct address to the audience or camera, for example a naturalistic speech to another character in the world of the play that is artificially performed out, will be capped at level 3. The chosen audience is up to the discretion of the centre, with mindful adherence to social distancing. To maintain social distancing rules, it may be advisable to consider smaller performance size groups, such as groups of 3 to 4 rather than 5 to 6. Centres may also choose to opt for monologue or duologue performances for ease of social distancing. However, it is always recommended to carefully consider the most suitable pathway for your individual students. Creative selection of appropriate text and extracts that can maintain social distancing for a small group may be more supportive for some students rather than a monologue. The same message is applicable for the design pathway. Students should always be steered towards the option for assessment that is best suited to them. Changes for design students. For 2021, designers are to follow the Component 2 requirements on page 40 of the specification, as in previous series. There are options in place if designers are not able to realise their designs in an actual performance. If a design student is not able to realise their design in performance, they can submit any rehearsal recordings or any other evidence that the student feels can help to determine how their design would have worked in performance. We expect to see some form of realisation of the design. This may be in the form of a recorded or written presentation explaining the intended design and what has been realised, which would include visual evidence such as photographs or visual recordings. Here are some of the examples of the evidence we might expect to see. For a costume designer, they might submit the design realised. If not during the live performance, the costume and hair, makeup, mask, if applicable, could be displayed on another person and evidence through photographs and recordings. If they're isolating, it could be from a person in their family. For a lighting designer, they might submit either the lighting implemented during the performance as a recording, demonstrating the Q-to-Q lighting states. Set designer, they might submit evidence of a set built within the centre and evidence of the staging uploaded, photographs or recording. If not during the live performance, we could expect a walkthrough with indications of performance entrances and exits, as well as the intended positions of the performers or props during the performance. This could also be displayed using a model box or a floor plan. For a sound designer, they might submit the sound implemented during the performance or recording demonstrating Q-to-Q operation. Students may submit a soundscape or recording of the sound effects. How to use the statement of intention to support your candidates. So here are the questions from the spec as usual. The explanation must include the following for performance students, between 150 to 250 words. Again, examiners will not read beyond 250 words. What roles are you playing? What is happening to your character in the extract? How does the key extract relate to the context of the whole play? What are your character's objectives, motivations and feelings? How are you interpreting this character in performance? For design students, what design role are you fulfilling? What is your central design concept in the key extract? How does the key extract relate to the context of the whole play? How have you interpreted this key extract through your design? And what are you hoping to communicate to the audience? Students should be encouraged to use the statement of intention to highlight specific points in their performance or design for the examiner. It may be supportive for students to use their statement to highlight challenges they have faced when preparing their performance and highlighting moments of strength for the examiner. The statement of intention does not form part of the assessment, but should be viewed as a dialogue with the examiner in which they set out their stall for their realisation. Students may face challenges when responding creatively due to social distancing restrictions or the issues involved that may have meant they did not create a scene in the way that they had initially wanted to. This can also be outlined in their statement of intention for the examiner. As previously stated, candidates must perform to the live audience and not the camera. They can outline their intended communication and impact within their statement of intention. The statement of intention should not be used to attempt to justify performing out to the camera or out to the audience when the style of performance does not support this interpretation. Candidates may have faced challenges in the application of physical skills due to social distancing. These can also be outlined in their interpretation. So we're going to look now at some technique ideas and support for performing at a distance and ideas for text choices. Open Drama produced a really useful document, an infograph, which you might have seen. Here's just a kind of overview of some of their best ideas. Have a seating plan or group plan on the whiteboard. Work in the same groups and the same working space each session for track and trace. Do not share resources such as masks, puppets and props. Keep doors and windows open. Consider using a contact register for your own records. Technical equipment should be operated by the teacher, or if by the student for exam work, antibacterial wipes should be used to clean all equipment. Regularly wash your hands. Mobile phones could be used for playing music, depending on your school policy. Keep costumes simple. Can they supply their own? Clean down blocks, chairs and wipe surfaces after each session. Before each task, students should be reminded that they must not make skin to skin, skin to clothing, or clothing to clothing contact with other members of their group. It's worth considering your performance style, use of proxemics and physicality of performance to support performing from a distance. Many texts and extracts can be delivered in a style which accommodates social distancing between the performers on stage. Monologues are an obvious choice, but duologues and small groups can also be performed with distancing measures in place. Careful selection of the appropriate text, extract and style would be key for centres. Consider episodic rather than a linear or realistic style, which offers opportunity for distance spacing. Monologue or duologue sequences within a small group extract, such as Dennis Kelly or Stephen Burkhoff. Text with themes that lend themselves to distance or separate characters and more distinct or distant proxemics, such as 5 Kinds of Silence or Monsters. Site-specific theatre, or even using an outdoor space. Peter Brook's empty space style theatre. Think about opportunity offered by the text for techniques that allow students to stand in their own space and face out, or direct address and asides, for example Shakespearean or Restoration texts. Narration or movement sequences that are symbolic. News report and verbatim speech from research such as My Name is Rachel Corrie or Little Revolution. Multi-rolling such as the Caucasian Chalk Circle or Under Milkwood. Greek theatre with opportunities for choral work focus such as canon, unison or repetition like the Trojan Women or Medea. Text written in the collective voice to allow spotlighting on one student with socially distanced ensemble, such as 448 Psychosis or How to Disappear Completely. Text intended for monologue or interspersed monologue, such as Sarah Kane or Mark Ravenhill. Students should be encouraged to work with limited set, props, costume to minimise contamination. The following techniques could also be used. Use of levels and inventive use of space and proxemics. Split stage for different locations, time zones, states of mind. Inspired by Frantic Assembly, see their website for supportive ideas on how to use their techniques with social distancing measures. Music motifs, either solo or distance. Use of mirroring or mime sequences for symbolic or realistic movements and gestures sequences. Use of media, projections, soundscapes or video work to define location rather than set and props. The previously mentioned texts are not recommended, they are simply a guide. The teacher-director is the expert in the centre and as such is responsible for making an informed decision for their candidates. Centres can also refer to the list in the Principal Examiner report on the Pearson Edexcel website. And this was the list that we included in 2019. Designers and distancing. How can designers design safely? Students should follow the design process. For costume, the performer's family members should take measurements on behalf of the designer to ensure social distancing. Costumes could be washed in school and taken home and kept safe by the performer. Where possible, they could be washed after each use at home by the performer. Theatrical masks must not be shared. Any makeable hair design as part of the costume should be designed by the design candidate but applied by the performer, following the design carefully. Set design. Consideration would need to be given as to how props are used and stored. Props should not be shared. They should be stored separately or by the performer and cleaned thoroughly after and before use. Set, such as painted flats, backdrops and projections, may be supportive. For sound and lighting, centres with multiple lighting and sound candidates will need to ensure that students take it in turns to use the equipment, ensuring everything touched is appropriately cleaned in between. All students should be reminded to wash and sanitise their hands, especially where there is more than one student working on lighting and/or sound design in a single class or bubble. This is a grid showing the design documentation required for 2021. Centres are reminded that any appropriate evidence produced in line with the requirements below should also be recorded and uploaded as part of the design student's portfolio. Further support and FAQs. Paul Webster is your subject leader. You can email him direct at teachingperformingarts@pearson.com. You can post questions on Twitter and using Facebook, and Paul's subject page can be found. You should also use the Ask the Expert facility. Frequently asked questions. We only have one student completing the course this year. Is it still a requirement to use non-assessed individuals to ensure minimum group size requirement for Component 2 is met? If you only have one student completing the course this year, it is not a requirement for you to find a non-assessed individual to meet minimum group size requirements. Students have the option to complete Component 1 and Component 2 through performing solo work. Can we use Component 3 text in Component 2? No. As with Section A of Component 3, these are forbidden text and would receive a mark of 0. Can we request a visiting examiner? Does it have to be recorded? Due to continuing uncertainty regarding COVID-19, we have taken the decision to request that each centre records their Component 2 performances and uploads them to the portal between January and March. Yes, it has to be recorded. The Component 2 window, is it the same, January to March? How do I know where to send it? The window remains the same and further details will be available soon. You will be able to complete the recorded examination at any point during the window. You will need to upload the recordings and appropriate documentation to the portal. We now know that the Department of Education has decided to move examinations for 2021. In the light of these decisions, we may extend the Component 2 assessment window, but this will be confirmed soon. Can a student do a monologue for both Component 1 and Component 2? Yes, this is perfectly acceptable under the changes for the 2021 assessment series. And finally, definitive advice. These are ever-changing and challenging times for all of us. If you are unsure about anything, please contact Pearson Edexcel, Paul Webster, or use the Ask the Expert feature for a definitive answer. Please be aware that the advice shared on social media forums by non-specialists, whilst well-meaning, isn't always the most accurate or the most up-to-date. Some more useful info. Please visit the A-Level Drama and Theatre homepage, which is regularly being updated. There will be a new ASG for each year. Assessment forms will change for 2021 and will soon be available to download. The specification has recently been reissued and it is on issue 4, which is also on the A-Level Drama and Theatre website. On the website, there are teaching and learning materials, exemplar materials, forms and administration. The principal examiner's reports, the guides, question papers and moderators' reports and past training materials. If you want to find out grade boundaries, you can type in notional grade boundaries, which will give you the component and the overall grade boundaries. These will refer to 2019. Grade boundaries change each year depending on the spread of marks. You can also get results statistics, and these are summarised overall, and use Results Plus to see your student scores for each exam question and how they compare with the national average.